I'd like to call to order the Clarkston Independence District Library Board of Trustees meeting for July 15th, 2024 at 6:30. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Jan Gaffney.
Here.
Tim Holcomb. Absent. Allison McFadden-Kiesling.
Here.
Nancy Moon.
Here.
Alan Pienter.
Here.
Marilyn Pomeroy.
Here.
He stands absent. Julie Meredith here.
Okay. I'll accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. This is the moment for the call to the public. I do not see any public. So let us move to the consent agenda. We have 12 items on the consent agenda tonight. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda as presented. Does anyone have a question about any of the 12 items? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Actually, there's 14 items. Oh, okay.
Snuck a couple in on the back.
Yeah. Let's have the Friends of the Library report. They've been busy.
Yes, we have. We have our children's book sale today for opening of the reading market, and we've been doing very well. This year we sent out a couple of email blasts, and we have had so much response and so many books, much more than we had, almost 3 times as much as we had available for our sale last year. So we're doing well.
Excellent.
Unfortunately, it's only a one-day event, but we're doing very well. And then I wanted to let you know that the Friends has opened a position on the board for a student member. And Ethan Cottling is a gentleman that I met at the April book sale. And he's an impressive young man. He's 19, and he is going to school at OCC, and he will be in January starting the police academy. And we have, at our meeting on Thursday, he joined the board. And this is going to be a 1-year position, and he will be, I will be mentoring him, but he will be following all of our officers to find out what the board is about. And it is something that he can rejoin. It's not just a limited 1 year. And we wanted to get some fresh input from somebody that's young and going to school, and rather than all of us mostly retired people on the Friends board. And I have met with him several times, and he's an impressive young man. You met him, Nancy. What do you think?
He's very impressive.
Very impressive.
Yes.
So that's about all the news I have for now.
Excellent, thank you.
But he will be with me on the board meetings moving forward.
Okay. We look forward to seeing him.
Thank you.
Okay, library statistics.
So we have a new statistical report layout. It's a little bit more streamlined, a little bit tighter, not quite so
Bigger
number heavy, bigger print. Yes, exactly.
You see the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very small.
So in terms of total traffic and circulations, up to 24,000 circulations, 10,000 total traffic, Overdrive patrons, 1,288, Overdrive downloads, 5,800. So good statistics for this month. This is for the month of June. So.
Question.
Yes.
The old report had a comparative.
Comparison.
It did. So I'm going to begin those comparisons again. I have to kind of rebuild. So I'm rebuilding the statistical database that I had before. Somehow it got damaged, and I have not yet been able. I just said, well, it's time to scrap it because there's new information. So one of the things I was going to ask the board today is, what statistics do you want me to provide? I was just providing you the stuff that I thought was cool. So to be 100% honest, that's where all those statistics came from. I'm like, that's a neat statistic. I'm gonna throw it in there and see what they think. So this is the core. These statistics, I think, are core statistics for the library. And yes, there will eventually be, as I reconnect the old data to the new data, we'll be able to do comparative year to year. Do you prefer year to year, month to month? It's kind of an open book at the moment. I can create just about anything at this point.
For me, as a retailer, I like to look at the same month this year versus last year, because and it gives us a sense of trend of where we're going.
Okay. So year over year. Okay.
Another question, circulations per day,
Yeah, I don't understand.
and then we have circulation conversions, is that?
Did I put that one in there? I forgot.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
2.33, is that renewals?
I apologize. So I think that's an average of all the new software, remember. So the circulations per day is basically all of this, and so I'm just going to rename those. It's circulations for the month.
Okay.
That's what that circulations per day was a lot of circulations. We do very tired clerks.
Yeah.
So that's the circulations for the month.
Okay.
The conversions is basically, again, retail. It actually goes off of a retail spreadsheet. It's the number of people through the door compared to how many things they checked out.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
over the last month, every person who walked through the door checked out 2 1/3 items.
That's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, that's what again, as I said,
Yeah, no,
I thought that was a neat statistic, so I threw it too. But I just have to rename. Those are monthly numbers, so those are the average for the month.
I think that's really interesting. The one thing that I continue to be impressed about in terms of the use of the library is a lot of people are coming in not for the traditional use of checking out material, but rather to participate in events and things like that. So this will give us an insight if you kind of look at where conversions are, and also, I guess if there's a way to skim it to see where people are coming in for events only, that because it's a different way of serving the community, and as we're trying to expand our mission and think about, sort of our strategic plan, probably maybe you don't have the capability to collect that information now, but it's something we ought to think about as a measure of whether a strategic plan starts to reach larger audiences and does what we hope it does.
Well, the program metrics kind of cover that a little bit. Those are the number of programs we have, the number of participants we have for the programs. So I mean, that looks like around, it's like about 15% of people that come through our doors at all that last month came in for programming.
That's good. And it's
So-
going up, isn't it?
The numbers are climbing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are definitely going up. So we had 10,421 people through the doors, 3,300 of them, or 3,400 of them were programs. So a third of our incoming people.
Very cool.
So one of the things that you and I had talked about, the people counter that we have, we only have it on the actual door, so the entrance of the building. But when I was at PLA, I talked to the people that do that, and you can actually put them in multiple places around your building and use it to count, for example, how many people come into a particular room, like our meeting room, and you could capture the amount, during a certain time, how many people were in the room for the program. It would help you to count, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a room full of people, count how many people came in and out of the room for that particular program. If we were to strategically put those counters in various places around the building, we could maybe tease out some of this data about who's coming in for programs versus do they then go to the circulation desk and check out materials. And because the way it counts them is based on physical movement and not capturing faces or anything like that, it does not impede on their privacy of what they're doing, but would help us kind of track people around the building.
And it is directional as well. I get ins versus outs. So that's I averaged those two numbers to get that total, because I figure every single person who came in probably left.
Well, for example, today, we had people coming in for programming, then they were going to the sale. So they were in a couple different areas for multiple purposes.
But they only counted one traffic
Right.
person for each one.
Which makes sense.
And if we had a counter on the top of the door, we would be able to count, the number of people that came in the door between, say, 12 and 1, and then how many of those people went into this room versus how many people went into that room.
Yeah.
So
And we could tease out some things.
Yeah, so I'm confident you guys will figure out the right systems based on what we're trying to figure out. I would just encourage, particularly as we get our strategic plan going, where are we finding it's most effective, best community response, all of that, along with all the other indicators. I just think it would be great to have a peek at it.
More data.
Hey, just tell me what kind of data you want. That's what I enjoy doing. The data gathering is actually fun. Except when my spreadsheet breaks, then I'm cranky. But other than that, if there's any statistic that you want me to either start capturing that I'm not, or ones you remember from the previous spreadsheets that aren't in here, I just let Julie know, and she can let me know, or let me know directly. It doesn't matter. My office doesn't have doors, so you can talk to me at any time, and just let me know what it is you're looking for me to do, because these statistics are for all of you and for the public to understand what it is we're doing. Some of this stuff goes into our yearly infographic as to what we did this year. So we had a lot of that stuff came out of in Sissy's. We had X number of checkouts last year, sort of thing that we used at that point. So I have all of the data, and it's actually fully available. So I just have to make it look in a way that works for people. And yes, like I said, the first one I did this afternoon when I was doing this, literally I think it was a 9-point font. I had that default. I can't even read it.
It is our responsibility, community.
So that was a good first effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, one data point I'd be interested in is actually how many unique devices connect to the public Wi-Fi.
Oh, that was on the old stats. Okay.
Oh, was it?
That was on
Okay.
the old stats. I can put that back on there.
So that was pretty
one of
cool.
the stats I had for those that I thought was interesting. Do you want specifically public or all?
Well, that would be who would be, that would be patron facing who would be associating against it. So that would be kind of interesting to see.
That can be done. I'm pretty sure I can get that. Because at the moment, it just tells me all things connected to all SSIDs, which
Right.
means the public and the private. And so I had the public and the private, and also up and download bandwidth.
Well, we're still using Meraki, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I know that's got a heat map in there too,
It
which
does.
is really cool too. So
It's a heat map.
And
it can show you where people on a wireless network tend to aggregate or congregate in one particular
spots
area. So
in the building.
it'd be cool, for instance, after hours when we're closed on the weekend, if people are
the
utilizing the
parking lot.
outside access points or something like that. So.
Yeah. And that's also how I learned where there's there's not dead zones, but lower bandwidth sections of the library when we were doing my tech assessment.
Oh, nice.
There's 3 spots in the library where the bandwidth is halved compared to the rest of the building.
Interesting.
So that's where I learned where I'm going to need to do some upgrades. So yeah, I think actually this is one of the rooms that's that way. Because it's the earliest ones. My earliest installs were 3 spots. And
Yeah, I put that one up there about 3 years ago.
So yeah, that's going to be replaced probably in the next 6 to 8 months with the newer ones, so that we get consistent connection all around the library.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No. All right, let's move to the library director's report.
So CIDL's Strategic Plan Community Survey was available from June 3rd through July 8th. We received 989 responses. Our consultants are compiling all of the data from the staff survey, the technology assessment, and the community survey into a learning report that will be reviewed with us at our staff and board retreats in the fall. At last month's meeting, the library board discussed the issue we've been having with Windstream, the company that supplied the library's 3 analog phone lines. At that time, we had asked Windstream to disconnect 2 of the lines, and we asked the provider of our VoIP lines to port the final line, the library's fax line, to their system. The primary issue with Windstream was an extreme rate increase with almost no notification, although there were also complications in disconnecting and porting the lines. On June 11th, we filed a complaint regarding Windstream's billing with the Michigan Public Services Commission, the MPSC. This situation is ongoing, and we are still awaiting contact from Windstream's billing department regarding corrections to our bill. A hearing with MPSC may be needed if Windstream is unwilling to negotiate an appropriate resolution. So I just want to kind of let you know where we are with that. I was dealing with calls even this morning, so we'll see how it goes.
It still makes me mad.
I'm cautiously optimistic, but we'll see. Okay. Nancy Moon and I are continuing to investigate the possibility of installing an EV charging station in the library's parking lot. Last week, we attended a workshop hosted by the Michigan Library Association to learn more about EV charging, the cost of providing this service, and the possible opportunities for funding. I also spoke with Bob Blackshear, our DTE representative on this project last week. We will be arranging a meeting with Bob, Jeremy Zinn, our electrician, and Nancy and I in the coming weeks. So that is still kind of an ongoing thing. The workshop was really good, though. I think there were a lot of things in there that we talked a little bit more about sort of the hidden costs of a project like that and kind of how to work around those. So.
Okay, good.
The Friends of the Library, and Independence Township Parks and Rec are working together to install 2 new little free libraries. One will be at Bridgewater Apartments, and we are inquiring about placing the other at Lighthouse Clarkston. The management of Bridgewater Apartments is very enthusiastic about getting a little free library. It is currently being primed and painted with a base coat of paint, and it will go to a local artist for decorative painting next week, and we hope to install it later this summer.
Great. Okay.
So. Once again, the library is partnering with the Clarkston Farm and Garden Club on their annual garden walk, which takes place on Wednesday, July 17th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. The walk begins at the library with an artisan market and features 7 beautiful gardens throughout the community. Advance tickets are available at Bourdain's, the Gateway, and the library, and tickets the day of the event are available in the tent at the library. And last but certainly not least, thank you to the Friends of the Library, Dave and Marion Barron, Sissy Phillips and Kelly Walbridge, and all of the staff and volunteers that participated in the library's entry in the 4th of July parade. We promoted our summer reading program and community survey. Dave and Marion's vintage white Corvette was the centerpiece of our walking group that was coordinated by Sissy and Kelly. The Friends of the Library provided candy and bookmarks to give away and t-shirts for us to wear, reminding the community that adventure begins at your library.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, regular business. First on the agenda is our audit presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. Can everybody hear me? Okay. And I apologize that I can't see over this.
You're good.
I would have the same problem, so I'm totally sympathetic.
So thank you again for having me. My name is Eileen Weaver, and I'm here from Maynard Casterison to present the audited financial statements for December 31st, 2023. So everyone should have a bound copy of the audit report as well as one loose leaf letter that was issued in conjunction with the audit. And so my plan is to just go through and highlight some of the pertinent financial information. I won't go through everything in page by page detail, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. But before I start, a big thank you to Julie and her team. I think the audit went very smoothly, even though it was our first year looking at everything. It was a pleasure to come out. We were on site for just one day to look at everything, and I think overall the whole process went very smoothly. So thank you again for all of your help. So with that, we'll start on page 1 of the bound financial statement. It's titled The Independent Auditor's Report, and has our logo in the top left corner. So these first 2 pages to the financial statements, again, are the Independent Auditor's Report, which simply describes what the purpose of an audit is. And that's for us as your auditors to issue an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements of the library in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. An audit is not designed to detect fraud, and we don't issue an opinion on the internal control systems of the library. But with that being said, a very significant part of what our audit procedures entail is actually going through and documenting all of the processes, procedures, internal controls of the library, and then actually taking a test of certain transactions and then walking them through all of those processes. So for example, we look at how your bank reconciliations are done on a monthly basis, how payroll is run, how receipts are brought in from inception all the way to being deposited at the bank, how all of your bills are paid. And if we would have had any findings or recommendations along those lines, we would have issued them in an internal control letter or a management letter in conjunction with the financial statements. For the period under audit, we did not have any findings or comments or anything that we felt warranted being put into a letter and then issued to the board. We had just a couple verbal recommendations, so just kind of maybe higher level things to work on that I'll kind of touch on toward the end of the financial presentation. And really, the most important paragraph is right on the very top. It's the opinions paragraph. And for the period under audit, so the year ended December 31st, 2023, the library is receiving an unmodified or clean opinion. That's the best that you can attain. So it's what you as a board want to see, and it's also what the state of Michigan looks for once the financials are uploaded to Treasury. And that's already been done because your financials were due June 30, 6 months after your year end. So a couple of years ago, the formatting of this letter kind of changed. It did not change from 2022, so nothing new. But what it did expand in the last couple of years was management's responsibility over the financial statements. And then if you look on page 2, there's some additional language for the auditor's responsibilities as well. If there's no questions on that, we'll go to page 9, which is the library's governmental fund balance sheet. So the balance sheet found here on page 9 lays out the financial assets, liabilities, deferred inflows of resources, and fund balance for the library's sole general fund. And really how I like to describe this statement is that it's as of a picture in time. So it's a snapshot of what were our financial resources, our assets on hand as of 12/31, followed by our financial obligations, so our liabilities, and then those deferred inflows of resources, resulting in fund balance or your equity as of 12/31. So overall, your balance sheet was very healthy. We look at our total assets of just over $5.1 million. And then when we look at the combination of your total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, that came to about $2.6 million. So assets significantly outweigh those liabilities. And approximately 55% of your total assets is in that cash. So the library doesn't have any investments. So very liquid overall as of 12/31. So if the library were to have closed its doors, ceased operation, you wouldn't have had any issues paying off those financial obligations with the resources that you have on hand. So then going down to the breakdown of fund balance for 12/31. So total fund balance just over $2.4 million, with about $483,000 being unassigned. And what that represents is what the library has available to cover expenditures in future years. So in any given year that your general fund revenues do not exceed your expenditures, that's essentially the cushion that you have to absorb that financial statement loss. Additionally, we have just a very small amount in non-spendable, meaning that that's already earmarked for 2024 financial statement obligations. And then we also have a pretty significant amount in our assigned for capital projects and building maintenance, about $1.9 million. And basically what that's saying is we're showing that that's being earmarked for, future years, library upgrades, kind of any of those big, maybe unforeseen expenditures that you may have. So kind of a good general rule of thumb is to have an amount in that unassigned fund balance that's between 15 and 20% of your annual operating expenditures. And essentially what that equates to is having enough on hand where the library could operate paying its general disbursements for a period of time between 3 to 4 months if you were to have any collection issues. So let's say we were late on getting our state revenue from the state, and if your property taxes, for whatever reason, weren't coming in on time, the library is still able to, pay its employees and keep the lights on. And for 2023, the library was at 20.2%, so you're just right there in that kind of recommended sweet spot. And just for comparison from the prior year, was a slight increase. You were at 19.08%. So again, overall, very healthy from a balance sheet perspective as of 12/31. If there's no questions on that, we'll turn to page 11, which is your governmental fund statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, or your income statement. So total revenues for the year, just over $2.4 million. That was an increase from the prior year of about 2.39 in 2022. That was also resulting in an increase to fund balance of about $46,000 in the current year. So when we take total revenues, $2.4 million, compared to our total expenditures of about $2.3, we added about $46,000 in the current year. Couple comparatives from 2022 numbers. Total revenues increased about 11.9% compared to the same time period, 12/31/2022. And where we saw the bulk of that increase was in your property tax values, or property tax revenues, excuse me. So as property taxes in your surrounding taxable areas go up, so does the amount of revenue that then the library in turn receives. And we also noted there was an increase in your millage rate from 2022 to 2023. So that also increased your revenues. Total expenditures in 2023, again, just over $2.3 million. And that was an increase of about 6.4% from 2022. And where we saw, again, the bulk of that increase was in your personnel, property taxes, or excuse me, payroll taxes and benefits, and then also the library books and materials. So increase to salaries and wages, and then as well as the collections that are available with the library. And that's exactly what we would expect to see, since the library is a service-based organization that as the library continues to grow, so does the needs of additional staffing, and then also the items that the library has available to its patrons. Any questions on that?
I thought our millage rate had decreased.
Not from your L4029, it didn't.
It stayed the same from one year to the next, because when we renewed it,
Okay.
it stayed the same, but it should not have increased.
I can't connect to our system right now, but I can verify. But I know your property tax values.
The property taxes.
The values went up.
The values went up.
So that even though I think our millage rate,
There was one year that our millage rate did not roll down, and we were surprised by the fact that
Right.
it did not roll, and that was last year. It did not roll down,
okay,
so.
almost every year it does roll down.
Yeah, the millage rate remained the same, but the property values went up. So
Right.
there was a slight
Okay.
increase in the property taxes collected.
That was our question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, we'll turn to page 13. That's the start of the notes to the financial statements. So I'm not going to go over every single note disclosure in detail, but the one that I do want to touch base on is note number 4, which is on page 20 of the financial statements.
So which page?
20.
Thank you.
So it's note number 4, titled long-term
Good. Thank you.
obligations. So this is a new note disclosure that the library has not seen historically. And what we found out through our audit procedures was that in previous fiscal years, there was not a liability recorded for the compensated absences for library employees. So that's the sick and vacation time that the employees would be entitled to upon separation from their employment with the library. So what this table describes is the restated balance. So that's what was put on the books as of January 1st, 2023. So that also restated your net position. Then we have the breakdown of the additions to sick and vacation time. So what your employees earned over the fiscal year, followed by the deletions. So the financial value of what they used, resulting in the balance as of December 31st, 2023. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we did not have a management letter comment for the year, but one comment, verbal comment that we did have was the language in how your current sick and vacation policy is worded is a little bit confusing, where it doesn't come outright and document that yes, employees are entitled to, X amount of vacation, X amount of sick time upon termination with the library. So that was one recommendation that we had, was for the board to potentially go back and review that policy and just kind of clean up some of that language.
Okay.
So again, new note disclosure for the year, but did not result in a management letter finding comment, anything like that. So kind of along those same lines, there's a couple additional notes that I want to touch on, and I'm kind of going to go in reverse order. So if everyone would turn to page 10, which is on page 23, this was another new financial note disclosure for 2023, and this is that restatement of net position. And so again, as I mentioned, because that liability had not previously been recorded on the financial statements for the library, this note disclosure is basically documenting how we arrived at that restatement amount and then the effects that it had on net position. So this one will go away in 2024. You won't see that restatement most likely. So then if we go back to page 22, we'll start with note number 8. So there was one change in accounting principle in 2023. There was one new accounting pronouncement, GASB statement number 96, regarding subscription-based information technology arrangements. And what this note disclosure is saying is that the library has evaluated, we have implemented the standard. However, there was no impact on the library's financial statements because you didn't have any of those subscription-based arrangements that fell under the standard. So that was something that we did evaluate. However, we noted that it wasn't applicable. And so this note disclosure is basically saying that we've done our due diligence, we've implemented it, but you're not going to see it on the face of our financial statements. Okay. And then lastly, note 9, there are a couple of new accounting pronouncements that are kind of coming down the pike, a couple that are applicable for 2024, and then a couple that are applicable for 2025. So same as note number 8, we will evaluate those when we come back to do the 2024 audit and determine whether or not any of those note disclosures will or will not be implemented on the library's financial statements.
So our management team will be aware of these things to look for.
Yes, absolutely. We are already in talks and in discussion at our firm and kind of gathering all of the documentation that we need. That way we're kind of ahead of everything as they come out, and we're not trying to play catch up when it comes time for the audit.
Okay.
So then the last item that I had to talk about is just that loose leaf letter that was issued in conjunction with the audit. This is our final board communication letter. Okay, it's just a standard boilerplate letter that we are required to give to members of the library board at the completion of the audit. A couple of things that this discloses. The first one is about 3/4 of the way down at the bottom, is it describes the significant estimates that go into preparing the library's financial statements.
I'm sorry,
So-
where is that?
Is it this?
I think it's a
separate
Cover letter.
Okay.
When I rubber banded it, it might have been on the bottom of your packet.
Thank you, I was looking at this.
One pager. Yeah.
Thank you.
Got
Thank you.
hidden under our,
Yep, so again, a couple of things this describes. The first is the significant estimates that go into drafting the financial statements. So for the library, the calculation for depreciation expense is based on an estimate of the useful lives of all of the library's assets. So because we deem that to be significant, that is disclosed here. And then also new for 2023, the estimate for your compensated absence liability, that's also based on estimates of employees' time, salary, different things like that. So because that was new for 2023, that has also been added to this letter as well. And then one other item I like to point out, and this would be on the back side of the letter, so that third line down where it talks about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. If we had found any material journal entries that were necessary to adjust any of the line items on the library's financial statements, we would also have listed those out here, as well as issuing that as a management letter comment. So we did have just a couple very minor adjustments, mostly for our purposes to draft the financial statements in our software. And so this paragraph documents that yes, there were a couple of adjustments, however, none of them were material to the financial statements. So really, I think the big takeaway was, again, 2023 was a very clean audit and solid financial year for the library. So I don't have anything else, but I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions.
thank you, that was very thorough.
That was wonderful.
Great job.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Julie.
Thank you.
Yeah, she and her team did all the heavy lifting behind it, so.
Well, you were a delight to work with. We really appreciated how thorough you were and staying right on top of things and making it easy for us. So thank you for that.
And the board likes to use the audit presentation to alert us to any better practices that would be useful, especially with a smaller entity than some you might work with.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Isla. Great job. Nice presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your summer.
You too.
You too, thank you. Okay, any comments or questions? If not, we will move on to reviewing the updated administrative procedures.
We're supposed to accept the audit.
Do we need to accept the audit?
Motion.
Yeah, we usually do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we will accept a motion.
I make a motion to accept the audit as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to present the library audit as presented. Questions were all answered. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eileen. Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay, now a review of updated administrative procedures.
So each year, the audit is an opportunity to review current procedures, consider best practices, and implement improvements. During last year's audit, we began a process of reviewing and updating our financial systems. We have a new auditor this year, and we've started 2024 with a new accountant. So we're building on the work that we've already started, and we are initiating some new projects to streamline workflows, communications, and embrace best practices. So just threw into your packet just a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we've done. Our monthly administrative staff meetings do now include the library board treasurer and the library's accountant. The treasurer has been with us in these meetings, but the accountant is newly added, and that's been nice. So these are regular check-ins to improve communication, provide accountability, keep projects moving forward, and allow for shared experience and expertise to solve any problems or correct issues. We've added some documented checkpoints of accountability to assure policies and procedures are being followed properly. So our signed checklists for accounts payable process, authorization forms for ACH payments, the bank reconciliation documentation being provided in the board packets are all examples of that verification process. Signed checklists for procedures provide a consistent reminder to determine how to maintain appropriate segregation of tasks when the usual person who does a task is unavailable. So this checklist form clearly outlines how a workflow should be segregated and the tasks as a reminder of instruction. So for example, and the people who sign checks can attest to this, that it shows you exactly what you're supposed to be looking at when you sign off on a check. And as we go through that process, if somebody in that process is missing and we need to say, hey, Bill, I need some help with this, and Bill steps in to assist because Nicole is absent, it says specifically what it is he is supposed to be doing when he signs his name to that. And it makes sure that we look, oh, Julie shouldn't be doing this because this is something that this other person should be doing. So it keeps all of those nice and tidy. And then there's also that documentation for the auditor when she comes, and she can see that we've got that all accounted for. Employee policies have been gathered, updated, and board approved into a handbook. And so the project to update those employee policies had been a long-term project. The bulk of the work is completed and board approved in March, and with only a few specific policies still being tweaked. And then all financial policies have been gathered and are in the process of being reviewed for updating, and Alan has graciously offered to assist me with that. I'm trying to get into that very quickly, but basically what I did was I went through what the state recommends that we have and also that financial guide for the public libraries, and I'm going through and I'm sort of matching them up because there are some policies that it looks like we don't have, but we do have them. They're just incorporated into another one. So I'm kind of going through and figuring out what we should sort of break apart and creating some drafts so that I can get them to him and have him take a look and help me clean them up, and then we'll bring them to the board for approval.
Cool.
And designate where these policies are coming from, right? In other words, which ones are state policies versus auditing policies.
Right, there's a certain number of them that are called out in state laws. State law requires you to have an ACH policy, it requires you to have an investment policy, it requires you to have a credit card policy, all those kind of things. Yeah.
And of course, in 2023, we had no investments, but in 2024, we will have some investments.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions about any of that?
Thank you. Those of us who sign can verify that there are a lot of checklists.
It's really helpful, I think, to have the check. I mean, it's a good reminder what it is. What am I supposed to be looking for here?
Okay, thank you. Let's have an update regarding our investment project.
At the June meeting, the library board approved a resolution and plan to open an institutional brokerage account with Fifth Third Bank. A plan for which library bank accounts would be the source of funds to wire into this new account and how the money would be invested was presented. The steps in that process and proposed process have been followed. Included in the packet is a spreadsheet summarizing the movement of the funds and messages from Kevin Mattaway, our institutional investment broker, outlining the investment purchases and estimated future interest earnings. The one thing I want you to note is that the spreadsheet is a snapshot of the library's account balances prior to the initiation of those wire transfers. It's intended to provide the board with a summary of the movement of the funds and doesn't match the final total because it doesn't take into consideration the wire costs that they took out. So there was a fee for moving the money, and then it also doesn't take into consideration any sort of last minute interest that we got as the money moved out of that account. Okay. And there was no good way for me to do it. Mostly what I wanted you to see in that spreadsheet was where the money came from. Like, okay, we took the money from this account and put it into this investment account, and also which accounts we closed as the money moved into this investment account. So you can see we closed a number of accounts as we moved that money. Any questions about any of it? It should look very familiar because it's pretty much what you saw in your packet last month, but I just wanted to show and verify that it's all been taken care of. Okay.
Very good. Number 4, Approval of the updated hotspot loan policy.
Great. This one comes from Chris, our head of circulation. With the help of the Friends of the Library launched a pilot program to circulate Wi-Fi hotspots in 2018 with a loan policy provided to the library, or approved by the library board on June 4th of 2018. During the pandemic, we had the opportunity to expand the service using ARPA grant funds and ordered dozens of hotspots for the schools as well as patrons and staff who needed them while they were basically sheltering in place. Since then, hotspots have maintained, if not increased in popularity. We currently have 41 hotspots and still find ourselves struggling to fulfill all of the hold requests. A major issue is that some individuals are holding on to hotspots long past their due dates. We have begun suspending service on the ones that haven't been returned after the 3 renewals have occurred. However, even this is not the only change that needed to be made. Unlike most other libraries, we have been allowing non-residents to borrow hotspots. Sadly, these users are often the ones that have the most difficulty getting them back on time or returning them at all. The proposed policy changes provide for Independence Township and Clarkston residents and those employed in Independence Township and Clarkston to be the only patrons eligible to borrow hotspots. It also creates a 1-week period for patrons to return them before service is suspended, as opposed to the previous 24-hour period, which seemed too rigid. These changes should go far to ensure that patrons have access to hotspots and that the library doesn't have to reorder items that come back long after they have been removed from the catalog. So you'll see the way that he's kind of laid this out. He's made sure that you can see where he's inserted additional text and the changes that he has proposed.
I do have one question, because on the front you referenced that a week instead of the 24 hours, but in the policy it says 48 hours.
Interesting.
Right.
I see that too. Well, what he gave me was the policy the way that he wanted it to be, so I'm assuming that's an interesting question. And he's not here to answer it for us.
The 48 hours makes more sense, because otherwise
Yeah,
it's a
week
whole
seemed
nother
like
week.
a kind of a big jump from,
Yeah.
from 24 hours.
I read
but-
that too, I
but,
wondered
yeah.
about that.
I'm going to assume that he meant 48 hours.
Right.
Good catch, though.
Sorry, go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Are the non-residents mostly Springfield Township residents, or how does?
He hasn't teased that out for us and reported it in this. Generally speaking, we do actually track Springfield residents separately from our other non-resident patrons.
Right.
He's not saying that here, and maybe that's what he is. Maybe he's grouping them all together. But we do actually track Springfield separately because TLN, the Library Network, versus our co-op, has a rule that states if more than a certain percentage of your circulation comes from a particular community, you either can limit those patrons more in order to balance it, or you seek some additional monetary support from that particular community. And we've always had a little bit of that with Springfield Township. We've gotten it under control by using a little bit of restriction in terms of how many items they can check out. It's minor, comparatively speaking. But in this particular situation, I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
That's just the one piece of information that for me, as I think about if people are using hotspots for kids' schoolwork or something like that, and in as much as different township, but they all serve all served by the Clarkston school system.
So in that case,
there are some by Holly, but you know.
In that case, there is an override, because the other thing that he didn't say in here but is included are the PAC passes.
Okay.
So PAC pass is a student card.
Okay.
And essentially what we do when we do a PAC pass is we consider it to be a works-in card. So
Okay.
any student, whether they're in Springfield or Independence Township, is issued a PAC pass, and we treat them, whether they're Springfield Township
Okay.
or Independence Township, as if they are an Independence Township resident. So they have the ability to use our hoopla, our hotspots, all of those things, as if
Okay.
they were a works-in.
That's good. I just want to make sure that
Yep.
students were not
Nope.
going to be cut short.
No, and so one of the ways that we do that, and one of the things we keep in mind, is that our quitclaim deed, the piece of property that we sit on, says
Came
that we
from
serve the
Clarkston
schools.
schools,
Yes.
right, yep,
And
okay.
so, yep, we do, and we consider those PAC passes, and that's an interesting point that this would be covered in a works-in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But we could have him add that in to make sure that that's very clear and bring it back if you'd like
I
to see
think-
that in the policy.
You don't need to bring it, for my purposes, please add it in, you don't need to bring it back. How
Okay.
about that?
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Does Chris have any stats on like how many have just outright gone missing and not returned, or?
Well, he hasn't put them here, but I believe that at the highest peak of the pandemic, I think we had 48
Okay.
hotspots, and we're down to 41
Okay.
in his notes. So they haven't necessarily all of them gone missing necessarily. Some of them they just sort of died over time, and we took them out of the collection. So he didn't give me the specific completely gone missing stat. But based on this, I would say
Yeah.
no more than 7.
Still a sizable amount, yeah.
Yeah, but they're an expensive item.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, they are an expensive item.
I mean, and it's really great to be able to provide that to people, but it's not fair for some people
You just
to then
keep it.
disappear with
Sure.
them and, you know, and
But-
then just leave us hanging and then not be able to provide them to other people who might need them.
Interestingly, he mentioned to me when he finalized this and gave it to me on Friday, he said, by the way, just so that you're aware, when Bill turns them off, our head of our IT management, when Bill turns them off, as he does, they tend to come back the very next day because they're no longer of use. So he turned a few of them off, and they literally came back into Dropbox the next day.
There
And
you
then
go.
they're going to get hit with a big bill of not having it returned otherwise, too. It's not working, and then they just have this item out there that's costing them, what was it,
Yeah.
$115
Yeah.
in replacement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. It's a good motivator.
Indeed.
So that was an added incentive.
Mm-hmm.
If you have it and it doesn't work anyway.
Well, and there was a conversation about how much trouble it is to turn it off and then turn it back on, and how much time we wanted to put in there to do that, because if he turns it off, and it's a lot of work to call, but it only takes a few minutes for him to do that, so not as big of a burden as we thought it might be, so.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? And I like the fact that we can tweak.
Mhm.
If one of our policies is not working the way we'd like, we can make adjustments.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Now,
Let's-
when you make your motion, do you want me to add in the students, the PAC-Pass students, as you do your approval?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that'd be
Please.
nice.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Good catch.
All right, I will accept a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the updated hotspot loan policy with the additional language regarding the past packs.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the hotspot loan policy as presented with the addition of information on the PAC passes. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Okay, now number 5. Approval to rescind deposits on library materials policy.
At one time, we had a significant collection of study guides to assist people in preparing for academic and occupational exams, such as the SAT or the ASVAB. These items were expensive and in high demand. Often they would get checked out and never returned. In order to encourage return, the library board approved a policy to implement a deposit on such items that would be refunded when the item was returned. Times have changed, and study guides are not the most common way for people to prepare for these exams anymore. The size of our collection has diminished significantly. It no longer seems feasible or necessary to charge patrons a $15 security deposit to borrow newer study guides. The process is confusing, and the charge has become less needed as an incentive for patrons to return the items on time, and more of a barrier to service for any patron who might not be able to afford the deposit. Since we don't charge a deposit for anything else, it is counterintuitive to our entire process. With a reduced usage and a very small number of study guides, it is hardly justified using an outdated and overly complicated process to apply and later remove deposits. So Chris is requesting that we eliminate this or rescind this deposits on library materials policy. Just sort of run its course.
So it's another tweaking. Policy tweak.
It's good to stay on top of them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, are there any questions? Comments? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to rescind the deposits on library materials policy.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we rescind the deposits of library materials policy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Of those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. And please, Julie, thank Chris, thank everybody who's doing the tweaking, making the, doing the study, making the suggestions.
Absolutely.
So that's,
Tweaking policies can be a tedious process, but it's an important one.
yes.
I'll make a
Okay.
note.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you've seen a reduction in the volume of circulation for those types of materials, so.
It's not even just the circulation of them, but it's also the production of them.
Right.
These great big books,
Right.
people just don't want them anymore. And it's like the phone book, they're just not,
Right.
they're finding other ways to prepare
it's
for these
online.
tests now, so, yeah.
Okay. Number 6, budget adjustment to transfer the website hosting fees.
Okay, and this one is from our IT manager, from Bill. When the Historic District website project was executed, the funds were budgeted in line 801, professional and contract services. When the project was completed, the funds to host the site continued to be budgeted in 801. When the library website project was executed, the hosting fees were budgeted in 931. That's Bill's line. So the difference is who was in charge of the project. The Historic District site was my project, and I put it in 801 because that's one of the budgets that I use. And when he was doing the website, he asked to have it put in 931 because that's one of the budgets he uses. So when the library's website was done, he put the maintenance fees and service agreements in his 931 line. What we're realizing now, because the same company is doing both hostings, is that they used to send us 2 separate bills, and they're like, oh, we're sending you hosting fees on 2 separate bills, and they put them together, and we suddenly realized that we were paying them out of separate lines. So we are requesting to make a budget adjustment of $2,000 from 801 to 931, and I will hand it all over to Bill and let him take this over. This is just a movement for efficiency's purposes. The money's there, and it would be easy to just slide it over to where it belongs, so that it would be easier to pay that bill. So.
And so this will be permanent.
Yes, and there's already a note not to do it in 2024, to make sure it's all in the same line. It was just one of those little tiny things that we didn't catch it when we were writing the budget. Because when 801 is checked, that's the one I look over, and when 931 is checked, that's the one that he looks over, and the two of us just didn't even notice it. So.
All right. I'll accept a motion.
I move that we approve a budget adjustment of $2,000 from 801, professional and contract services, to 931, equipment maintenance.
I'll second.
Did you get that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we make the budget adjustment to approve $2,000 from 801 professional and contract services to 931 equipment maintenance. If there are no questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. And now, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion is adjourned at 7:28.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Efficient.